So for our first speaker today, we have SIDEQUEST Steve. He's an avid adventurer, canoeer, photographer. He's also a digital marketing consultant. I actually bothered him the other day to help me with some HubSpot stuff, so very helpful there. Entrepreneur, business owner, and he was actually on Dragon's Den. So if you look up Steve to Dragon's Den, there's a pretty interesting video you can watch. And lastly, Steve is an aspiring DJ himself, trying to help us build our own festival coming 2030. So without further ado, let's all give a warm welcome to Steve.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Leo. Thank you. This is camera. Yeah, so thank you for introducing me. If you ever do end up going to Dragon's Den, you want to see a good pitch, actually just look up Battle Sports Dragon's Den. That was the episode that I was on. We actually, it looked like we got a handshake deal, but in the end, actually only 30% of those handshakes you see on TV actually go through. So 70% of all those handshakes don't go through, because what happens is they'll look up the business and then they'll decide whether or not they want to invest, but most of the time they don't. But anyway, that's a different story. So here today, I'm going to be talking about overcoming imposter syndrome. So show of hands, how many of you people have ever felt that you felt like an imposter, that you felt like maybe you were not good enough for something? I guess everyone, but if you didn't raise your hand, I'd probably single you out. But everyone rose their hand, so that's amazing. And the thing is, imposter syndrome, ironically, doesn't ever go away. You will always feel it inside of you. But there are certain ways to help you mitigate that feeling, to make that feeling of like you feel that you're not worth it, that you're not good enough. You can shorten that to getting to the point where you know exactly what you want to do. And the thing is, imposter syndrome does end up blocking, our creative talent. And at times, you might think, oh, maybe I don't want to submit my new set, or maybe I can't join that contest. But the biggest thing is that you can. And most important of all, one of the biggest things of how we overcome imposter syndrome is being your authentic self. So being your authentic self is actually sort of a lifelong journey. And the thing is, you're probably going to be changing as you age. 5 years, 3 years, 10 years from now, you may be a little bit different, but there will always be one core part of you that will always be the same. And that is part of the journey that you take forward and focus on, because that, becoming your authentic self, is the opposite of feeling like an imposter. So I have 5 ways of how you can mitigate that, how you can get through that imposter syndrome and get to who you are. And I'll share the slides afterwards if you can't see it, but basically the way I ordered this was from the easiest to the longest. So on the first ones, in terms of overcoming imposter syndrome, is remember your wins. So the creative path, as all of you know, is made up actually of many small moments. The times you sit down in the studio, the times that you're putting a track together, the times that you're putting different phrases into your song, all of that adds up. And the biggest thing you have to do is always take some time to look back at the things you've accomplished and celebrate some of your wins, even if it's small or big. And even for me, when I first joined Just Streaming, the first set I submitted was complete shit, but Charles had faith in me.
It was shit.
I know. Yeah, I listened to it again. I was like, why did he say it was great? But because of those nice words and because he gave me courage, I submitted, and then I actually ended up joining in on the Veld AP that Just Streaming hosted. And the biggest thing is that I never deleted that set list. I keep that set list that I created as a reminder of where I started. And another big thing is that where you work, either it's in your office, your living room, always make sure to have those small reminders of your wins in front of you. It could be little plaques, rewards, or pictures of yourself in playing at one of your favorite venues. Or maybe it could be something where your friends are telling you that this track is really good. So always have things that can remind you of your wins. So second part, and I wish Theo was here, but he's not, but I actually took this from him, the power of incremental iteration. What that means is that when you're putting in the work, you're accomplishing things, not by like big items, finishing your song all in one day. What you're doing is taking things step by step and accomplishing small things at a time. And the reason why I say that is because when you're in the zone and you're breaking down the tasks that you have to do and finishing it piece by piece, sometimes you start to forget about that whole imposter syndrome because you're working on exactly what you want to do and what you want to put out. And another thing is that, say if you're in a creative block and you're working on your piece, a lot of times it really is you just got to get up and go and exercise. So that's another way of just getting yourself out of that zone. Because sometimes when you're doing something, the same thing, and you're not getting a result, that can sort of lead to insanity. So the biggest thing is to always put yourself out there, get up, and just go for a walk, because sometimes you might even have a different perspective when you come back to doing your work. And also, as part of making those small accomplishments, the biggest thing is that perfecting that piece isn't the goal. The progress is the goal. And another thing that I learned from my other entrepreneur friends is what they call no more 0 days. And what that means is that each day you're taking a small task and working on it. So that way you don't ever feel like you're not accomplishing something. Because over time, months on end, when you do a little bit of that work each day, you look back 6 months later and you already have what you want to put out. So another one, number 3, choosing the right community and friends. And that's kind of how I got out of my imposter syndrome, just like Charles over there, who really helped me out in listening to my shitty ass set and actually saying that he was a fan. I didn't quite believe him, but then I thought, all right, that's good. It's good enough for me to submit. And after that, a lot of things have changed since submitting. I got to meet all the people from Just Streaming. Now I'm part of the team as well. And really getting in there and learning how to DJ actually would change my life. And yeah, there's a few good pictures here. I wish Cass is here. So being part of Just Streaming really helped me learn how to express my creative side, because I was always looking for a creative outlet. And previously I used to do theater drama as a kid, and after school my parents didn't want me to do that anymore. So I kind of just left that piece of me behind, and then years on years I always wanted to get back and perform and do something creative. And Just Streaming helped me fulfill that need. And now as I go through the process of learning how to be a DJ, being part of the community really helped accelerate my learning, and that gave me a lot of courage and confidence. So the fourth part right over here is using your thoughts and emotions as creative fuel to get through that imposter syndrome. And the thing is, I wrote this down here, that negative emotions is not negative. It's actually another fuel source. So I learned that actually from a coaching course I took, and one of the professors, Maya, talked about that anger, sadness, grief, that is actually not inherently negative. It's a signal for yourself to make a change. But also, you can use that anger or sadness or whatever you're feeling deep down and be able to use that in your creative process. So at times when you're feeling not happy, you're feeling angry about something, and people are doubting you and you really know that you can do it, you can focus in and use that as energy to push yourself to continue working on that piece that you want to make. And another big thing about using your thoughts and emotions, your thoughts make you. So that's another piece that Professor Maya talked about, is your thoughts make you. And what that means is that if you keep thinking that, oh, no, I can't do it, or I don't know if I'm good enough, that will just continue to perpetuate over and over. But when you start filling your head with yeah, I believe I can do it. I believe I can finish it. I believe that this is going to be something big. When you start believing in that, when you start telling yourself that, it's almost like what a lot of people say, positive affirmations. But when you keep thinking about it in your head and pushing yourself, that can help you get to the next level. And another thing about using your thoughts and emotions, I also say, use whatever it takes to push you. So at times, finding motivation can be tricky, but there's many different ways of staying motivated. And like some people use different tactics, some people go for walks, some people do some research, but whatever it is that pushes you, what I find in terms of motivating myself will be different for other people. So when you're discovering part of yourself and figuring out what motivates you, use that. So last part here, and this is probably one of the most important, and it kind of wraps up a lot of what I was talking about, was that in terms of getting to your authentic self, your authentic self is already in you. A lot of what you like is already there, but part of it is actually discovering that within yourself. And that's where you start to learn to trust the layers of who you are. And this right over here is called the hero's journey. And a lot of you have gone through this process, not just for working on your music pieces, but also like through life, going through a new job, moving to a new place. Part of this is that journey itself. So in the beginning, see up here, this is called the normal world. And the normal world is things that are known, that you know about, that are familiar. But it's, say, for example, you're making a new artist piece, a new song. And there's sort of a call to adventure, that you have this idea that there's this really interesting song that I want to make, and I think people are going to like it. So then one of my friends named Charles created this song called Hentai.
Can you go back? Okay.
You're a degenerate.
So he thought that, okay, this song is something that I really want to put out there. So I'm going to meet my mentors and figure out how we can get to work. And from there, what we call crossing the threshold, you go from the normal world down to the unknown. That's where things start to become more interesting, because now you are in a place where you're starting to learn, you're starting to try, and you go through trials and failures, and you find helpers. You ask your buddy Fabio, like, hey, can you listen to this song? And before the drop happens, there's a girl that says, hentai! Like, what pitch should I have it at? So that kind of stuff relates back to the hero's journey. You have people that will help you out. And the interesting thing is, whenever you go through this process, there will always be opportunities and things that actually do come up, that when you're working on something, that people, or you'll end up finding people that can help you on making that musical piece. This musical masterpiece right over here. And through that, when you're working through that art piece, the old part of you dies, because a new part of you is reborn, which is called the death and rebirth. Because as you make a new song, you realize that the revelation and what we call changes and atonement, what that means is that when you create that song, you start to realize that you can do this, you can accomplish things, and you'll start to work on other songs. So, I'm sure Charles wasn't the same after he made that song over there. And I know I wasn't the same after I listened to it too. So the biggest thing is, maybe another part of this also is, once you finish that piece, you get back to the normal world. And this cycle continues over and over, depending on what you do in life, moving to a new place, making a new song, or you come back to here and you're an artist named CL, and you're thinking, maybe I'm going to make part 2 of this.
It's done.
Oh, VIP remix.
It's already done. Part 2 is done.
Oh, I can't wait to hear it. So that sums up the 5 ways to thrive as your authentic self, as a way of being opposite of imposter syndrome. So thank you, everybody, for listening. And if you have any questions, just let me know. Questions? Mazzy, yeah.
All right, so before you go and do something you consider big, like let's say you're playing at a show, do you have a ritual that you do before you go on stage, or like?
Yeah, my ritual is freaking out. No, my ritual is sometimes I use a lot of visualization of how I'm going to perform. Because whenever I like to DJ, I do a lot of theatrics. You've probably seen me do perform where I like to raise my hand at certain points or just go up to the crowd and then rile them up. So I think about exactly kind of what I do. And that's part of how I get through it, to imagine what it's going to be like when I step on stage.
What made you decide to go from all the certain avenues in your life to where you're at now? Like everything that you've done, obviously in the first poster you've seen, your entire life you've done, X, X, and X here, but now you decide to go into a more creative role of something that all of us are kind of dreaming about. What made you step into that from something so serious to something that's a little bit more adventurous and out of your comfort zone and everything else too? Like what made you decide to be like, oh shit, like I want to do something like that?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. Question was how do I, taking this creative path. I always want to do it actually, but being Chinese, your Chinese parents aren't always the most supportive of your creative endeavors at times. I mean, you're really lucky if you do have Chinese parents that say, yeah, go be a DJ, that's awesome. But for the most part, they're going to tell you to be, being an accountant is actually pretty good, or a doctor, you get stable income. But as time went on and as I got older, and I did go through all that whole professional side, and I ended up getting a corporate job. And then as I went through it, I'm like, I hate this. I hate this. I hate coming to a cubicle and working every day. And from there, I just started to realize I want to get back into the creative path. Of course, the creative path is, it's unknown. There's a lot of different factors that can play into it. But for me, I feel more alive doing it than sitting in my cubicle 9 to 5. Christine.
Are you in a new hero's journey right now? And if so, you probably are in multiple. Is there anything particular, and where are you?
I would say in terms of the hero's journey, I love you. I love you. For me in particular, right now I am right over here, growth and new skills. Even though I literally just started DJing this year, so there's still a lot of things I need to learn. My transitions are not always the best. Sometimes people hear it, and then other people are like, "Oh, I heard that transition wasn't that good." And they tell me.
I'll tell you. Sorry, I didn't want to. But the reason, sorry, I'm gonna chime in just really quickly about the transitions and stuff like that. And the reason why people hear it now is because everyone's a fucking DJ now.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the only reason why.
Yeah.
But everything else, a lot of people actually won't really hear those mistakes or anything like that. So I give kudos to you for trying really hard and doing everything that you're doing. So keep it up, man. I'm really proud of you.
Thank you.
Okay, so the question is what are your future goals right now? Because I know you have a lot of side quests, but I want to hear your main quest.
Yeah, well, it's funny thing because all those side quests kind of add to the main quest. But one of the goals I want to do in terms of DJing would be to eventually play at EDC Orlando. Now, the reason why I want to play EDC Orlando, not Vegas, is because EDC Orlando is just it's just so much more accessible. It's easy to get to. Whereas EDC Vegas, it's you have to go into the desert and you have to drive an hour and a half to get there. It's chaos. So EDC Orlando is sort of where I want to see myself probably in the next few years or many years later, who knows. Yep.
What put you on the DJ journey?
Sorry?
What put you on the DJ journey?
Oh, what put me on the DJ journey? I always throw a bunch of house parties, and eventually one of my DJ friends stopped DJing, so I was like, oh, who's gonna DJ? And I thought, well, I could DJ. It seems pretty easy. So I watched a bunch of YouTube videos from this guy named DJ Carlo, which that's one of the best places to learn. And then I rented a deck for $30 a month from Long McQuaid, and the rest was history.
So about your authentic self, we all encounter situations where sometimes the situations we come in, whether it's work, the values, the advice that we were given, may conflict with how you really want to do what you want to do. So how have you been able to slowly overcome these obstacles, even despite those values and the way of life may be benefiting you, but it doesn't align best with you? So how do you still continue to be your authentic self by adapting properly to whatever advice you're given?
Yeah, and also it's a good question. And there's always like self-doubt in my mind that always comes like when people give me advice or certain things that I should do. And how do I get back to my authentic self? Really, it's like just really going back to, sorry about that. Going back to like some of these items here. And the bigger item that really helps me out a lot is just using my thoughts and emotions to help push me further. And what I mean by that is I'd go on like long hikes on my own and just like have an intention. Before I go on that hike, I put that thought of like, do I still want to do this? Do I still actually want to really be a DJ? And then through that hike, sometimes like a sort of inspiration just sparks and I'm like, oh yeah, I still want to do that. So that's sort of like my way of doing it is going on hikes, just spending time on my own. And eventually I find that trusting myself that it will come to me.
So you mentioned all of your side quests have helped you to discover like who your authentic self is. Are there ones that you've tried and you went, oh, like this is not for me? And what lesson have you learned from it?
Oh, actually, yes. So I did a course in Second City for stand-up comedy. And as I was going through that course, I thought that we'd be like telling a lot of jokes, but actually most of it is just sitting down writing throughout the whole class. 90% of the class is writing, and then the only time you actually do perform is at the end of it. And then when I saw sort of how the community worked in the comedy space, I just felt that wasn't for me. Just something about it where it just seemed more challenging and harder for me to do. Whereas when like I joined Just Dreaming, things just worked out a lot more smoother, like going to a lot of the events, talking to the people, I just felt more at home.
Cool. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.